All right, welcome everybody. This is a WellStart Health webinar on the 3 high hurdles to weight loss and health. I'm Howard Jacobson, and I'm joined by Sarah Bofinger. How's it going?
Hello. Amazing. How are you?
Very, very well. We got a bunch of people. I see Quantum
Quantum.
saying hello. So the idea is, we've got a lot of people who have made their journey and they've attained success and they've made these transformations and they've gotten health. And then when you ask them, like, how did you do it? Like we were talking yesterday on the webinar, and it's like, well, I learned a bunch of stuff and I sort of did it. And in a way, the people who have been successful, we kind of get blind spots about like where it was hard. We just sort of like look back and go, oh yeah. So, obviously if I just, when I fell down, I get up, those things. So I think it's useful. I thought it was useful actually for you guys yesterday to kind of reflect on, like, it wasn't so easy. There were challenges, there were mistakes. And it's kind of, I think it helps us appreciate even more when we have made this journey, just, the moves we had to make to get it right. Because we know so many people who start on a path to better health and for one reason or another get distracted or lose focus or give up. And so this webinar is kind of an invitation to people who may have felt that way. Like, yeah, I understand that plant-based eating is really healthy. And if I could do it, I would, reverse my diabetes, but I've tried. Yeah, it works for you, Sarah. I'm sure it works for you, Howard, but I can't do it. I've never stuck to a diet in my life, and I can't take one more disappointment. So let's dive in to help people get over that hurdle.
Sweet.
All right. So we're going to talk about some different models of behavior change, one of which I think is very disempowering, and it's the one almost everyone believes, even if, and when you tell people about it, and we'll share it, people are like, well, that can't be right. But without thinking about it, is kind of our default. Like we act as if this is what we believe, and so therefore it's what we believe. We're going to talk about those 3 high hurdles, and then some action steps that you can take if you're interested. So I'm Howard Jacobson. You may know me from the covers of books. My name is there second for a bunch of books about health and science and fitness. I'm also the host of the Plant Yourself podcast, and I am the chief habit nerd or chief of behavioral science, whichever you prefer, at WellStart Health. And WellStart is really kind of inspired by this guy, Josh LaJaunie. This was him in 2012, before he discovered plants and running and really the mindset shift that enabled him to turn into this by mid-2016. And, Josh was just the first one that I met. We also have, and his part of his mission has been to spread the word. So here he is, excuse me, on Good Morning America, on the Today Show. And WellStart Health really took off as a software platform and an institution kind of around his vision. And as we started spreading the word, it became clear that he was not a unicorn. He was not a one-off person and it turns out there's lots of people who have these amazing journeys. Some of them are sort of more photographically awesome, like Josh losing 230 pounds. But we have with us today Sarah Bofinger, who goes from left to right on my screen to the point where you can now breathe underwater, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that was the first lie I've told today, but tell us your story.
Well, and it's funny. It's like each time I tell it, I feel like I'm getting really good at short story. Like, I'm like, okay, forget the details, But so I was born with hip dysplasia. I've had a total of 7 hip surgeries. As a child, I wanted to be a Olympic swimmer. My last surgery was when I was 15.
And when was your first surgery?
My first surgery was 21 days old.
Uh-huh. And so, and you mentioned that you swam before you walked. Why was that?
Because the traction that they were putting me on was like a lot for a baby. And so they wanted to do some type of rehab, and they felt like the water was an amazing tool to use.
So 21 days old, your first surgery, then 5 more, and then the 7th when you were 15.
Yes.
And but even having all these surgeries, like, didn't clue you in that you weren't Olympic material. Like, I would never have thought, like, oh, look at me constantly needing work on my hip from medical professionals. This must mean I should, be one of the best swimmers in the world. Like, where did that come from?
Well, because, okay, so my mom tells the story the best, because it's like the first day that I was on the swim team, and like I dove into the pool and I swam a 25 and I came out and I was like, Mommy, I love it. Like, just the idea of like diving into a pool, like swimming as fast as I can onto the other side was like golden for me. Like, that was just like life. And so I joined the swim team at age 6, and then I started having, hip pain and things around age 13. So I would take a bunch of ibuprofen, and even the swim team, coaches back then were like, yeah, just take ibuprofen, you'll be fine. But I always was sitting out of practice, always was, just like, oh man, I want to be this Olympic swimmer, but here I am on the side of the pool deck not wanting to swim right now. What's going on? Then I had that surgery. The surgery kind of made it seem like really impossible, instead of using that to, fuel myself to be like, okay, here it is. Like, I'm going to make this like comeback, right? Well, that just made it even further. And I got hooked on drugs and alcohol through college, and failed out of college, and went back, got my associate's degree, so I could at least say I had some kind of degree. And then from then I just worked a bunch of jobs. I never really found anything that I liked. I was in this relationship. It ended. I then didn't really have anywhere to go, but I had this like Olympic dream that I was pursuing. And in those moments, I then had some trust. And then I went on to, continue and to build relationships by, rebuilding myself. Like, I feel like that was kind of the death part of Sarah, and the rebirth of Mergoddess into now a WellStart health coach, and, pursuing this Olympic dream. And it doesn't necessarily meet like the Olympics for me is more of just like this really big goal that allows me to just keep chasing something and enjoy the journey more than like needing to have the outcome.
Right. Like, what really impresses me about you're going for Olympic gold is how, at the same time, how tightly and how loosely you hold that goal.
Yeah.
Like you are, as much as anyone I know, mastering yourself and your own actions, and that you can't control what anybody else does in the pool. It's utterly irrelevant, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all like, it all comes down to me, and it's like really amazing how like this is kind of turned into like my like spiritual awakening thing, where it's just like I'm becoming like this version of myself that only maybe could have been in a dream state at one time, and now it's like ready to be birthed, and it's like really exciting to see that, and it's cool.
Yeah. And the other thing I'm noticing is as you tell your story and as you continue to evolve, you get quieter and faster every time you talk about the negatives. Right. Like, you go, hi, I'm Sarah. I'm Mergoddess. I was born with hip dysplasia. I had 7 surgeries. and then I was on the swim team, and then I was addicted to drugs and alcohol, and then right. So, I mean, I don't know how consciously you do that. I think, from talking to you, that there's some conscious effort to not sort of dwell and swim in that story.
Yeah. Well, it's just because like I've really been also working on like rewriting my story and looking at those negatives as not like the details matter, but more of, okay, this actually happened, but now I've been able to take this data and now apply it to the now and see like where that can take me, because before I would always, like when I would tell my story, I was actually very focused on the negative parts. I felt like more of a victim where I'm like, oh, little Sarah had 7 hip surgeries, look at me, and now it's just like, oh, I'm Sarah, I had these surgeries, now I'm doing this awesome stuff, I'm helping people along the way. And it's just more empowering for me to look at it like that, because a lot of us look at our own journeys like that. We really focus on those, well, I did this diet, back in the day, and it just really was horrible. And so now I'm going to carry this story with me in the now and wonder why I'm not creating something new, because I'm bringing this old data with me that's not serving me in the way it should.
Beautiful. I think that leads right into kind of our high hurdle number 1, which we'll get to in just a few minutes.
Nice.
So where are we here? So this is what I talked about, this model of behavior change, that when we tell people, does this make sense? They're like, no, this is way too simplistic or judgy. And yet, when we look at how we approach behavior change, this is what we believe, that, oh, if I know something, then I should be able to do it. If I decide to do something, then I should be able to do it. And so if I know the right thing to do and I decide I'm going to do it, and so, so that's like, okay, we all know exercise is good, so I'm going to join the gym and start going on New Year's Day. Or, I read the China study and I watched Forks Over Knives, and so I know that a whole food plant-based diet is the healthiest one. It'll help me lose that weight and reverse my diabetes and get my cardiac risk factors down, so I'm going to do it. And then people don't do it, or they do it for a while and not that well, or they do it for a while perfectly, and then one day there's the potluck or the party, or they go to the bar and then like, oh well, like, I'll put that book along with all the other self-help books that I flirted with and never really embodied. And so what do we tell ourselves at that point? See, Sarah did it, Howard did it, but I'm too lazy. I'm too unmotivated. I'm too undisciplined. Or we can get more granular. You don't understand, Sarah. I have a sweet tooth. Right? No, Sarah.
I really like cheese.
I really like cheese. Yeah, Sarah. I would love to be an Olympic swimmer, but I'm not a morning person. Right? Like I have this thing. It's that story, right? It's my 7 surgeries. It's my period of addiction, and that can either be an asterisked 7-point font footnote, or it can be the billboard of my life.
Exactly. The foundation of what you're trying to now build versus the old pyramid that just wasn't working anymore.
Right. And I'll mention now, if anyone has comments or questions. Oh, Sarah, you saw it and responded to it. You are such a good multitasker.
I'm good.
You're right. So Elizabeth says, trying to shed the identity of a sick person. And Sarah, and I wonder if, Elizabeth, we could bring you in at some point to talk. You can just you can type yes or no, depending on how comfortable you feel sharing your own story, which is an amazing one, and is an amazing one in progress, as are all of ours.
So I can't see the questions.
So, and why do we know, we know this is in people's implicit model of behavior change, because this is what people do, and this is how they respond when they don't have immediate success. So we're going to look at a different model, the WellStart Health Attainment model. And what this is it just makes more sense. And when people see it, like I've never had anyone see it and say, whoa, that's complicated, or whoa, I need some time to think about that, right? People look at it and they go, yeah, duh. Right? So let's do a little yeah, duh. Okay, and Elizabeth, thank you. We'll bring you in here. So here's the yeah, duh. I should call it the yeah, duh pyramid. And the idea is that the bottom parts are the foundational, and then we build on them. So first thing we need is motivation, right? If you didn't want to be a mer goddess, if you didn't want to be an Olympic swimmer, you wouldn't be doing all this stuff. Right? If people don't want to lose weight or reverse their disease or prevent disease, they won't be doing it. Right? So there's the motivation, and we love to focus on motivation, and there's a good reason for that, which is without it, it's like the fuel for the journey. If there's no gas in the tank, it doesn't matter how good the car is. It doesn't matter how good your GPS is. It doesn't matter how good the roads are. It doesn't matter how clean your windshield is. It does, if you don't want to go, no one's going anywhere. So, but the trouble is it's one of 7, and people tend to stop there very often. And the second one, the green one, next is self-efficacy, which is just a fancy social science word for I can do it, the belief that you can do it. And so a lot of people fall down on self-efficacy, right? Because yeah, Sarah, you could do it, but I can't. And when you think back to like your low points, did you ever have problems with self-efficacy? Did you ever doubt yourself? Like, yeah, I can lick this addiction, or I can get back into shape, or whatever.
No, I mean, I didn't think I could do any of it, really. I mean, I had like a lot of self-doubt and feelings of unworthiness and anger, and just like there was just a lot of I didn't have any of that, like, and the only way that I was able to do it was to lose, like, I mean, the first loss for me was to lose my job, and then applying for jobs, it was just like, it showed me like, I don't want to just apply for jobs, and then it like started to get like, what do you want to do, Sarah? Oh, I want to like lose some weight. And then I joined a boot camp place, and then it was just like, oh, I want to be a trainer, and then it's like, and then like, oh, now I want to go for the Olympics. Like, okay. That was like the biggest stretch. I started small. I would be like, okay, I want to do this little thing, and then they get bigger, and then you get more confident from it. Yeah,
that's the perfect answer to the self-efficacy problem is, okay, you don't think you can do X, Y, and Z? Can you do A? Mm-hmm. Can you do 1/10 of A?
Exactly.
Right. So in a lot of our coaching with WellStart clients, the question is, well, what are you confident that you can do? And very often, do you ever find this, like when you're coaching, that they're embarrassed to say the thing because it feels too small and insignificant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even when we're texting, like it's just like, no, like I gotta have this like big thing, but when you start to allow to show them that it's okay, like whatever step you're at, it's perfectly fine, because this step, you're going to grow from it. And if you can achieve this step, the next step's going to be even better than that one, and then it's just like, you just start to see this path unfold for yourself.
Yeah. It's like, I used to be a math nerd. I know people will find this very surprising. Think, no, Howard, you were the quarterback of the football team, right? Right. You were prom king. No, I was the nerd. So we used to. So one of the pieces of math that I love is the Fibonacci sequence, which is just basically 1 + 1 = 2. And then you take the second number that you just added. So there's the second 1, and you add it to the 2, and you get 3. So the pattern starts out 1, 1, 2, 3. So these are tiny little increments, right? But then you add the last two numbers together and you get 5. 2 plus 3 is 5. And then you add 3 and 5 and you get 8. And then you add 5 and 8 and you get 13. And if you draw this, what you end up with is this beautiful spiral, like the distance between one to the next point. And in a little while, you realize that these small additions, you're taking bigger and bigger leaps with every new step. And it's kind of a model of, like, there's so many things in the natural world that can be mapped onto Fibonacci sequence, from the spirals of shells to that really freaky looking cauliflower broccoli thing with the green spikes on it, to, you can sort of map out like the golden mean and beautiful, facial features to the same thing. It's like this, the Fibonacci progress is like a law of nature that, and like any law, like if I try to, defy gravity, I'm not going to do as well as if I acknowledge that gravity exists and then, build my plans around the existence. Sarah writes, Sierpinski gasket. So I'm going to have to go look that up.
You mean Elizabeth? I can't take
Elizabeth,
credit for that.
right?
That was Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, right?
That's quantum. I'm not a mathematician, by the way, so we'll just get that clear.
Right. You do body physics.
Exactly. Yeah, I do. Right. I count laps when I'm swimming.
Excellent. So let's run through the rest of this pyramid. So strategy and tactics are where a lot of work gets done around, okay, Sarah, here's what you're going to do. Here's your training plan. Here, the idea is, if you want to get stronger at the butterfly, you've got to develop real flexibility here. You've got to get your center of gravity lower in the water, and you've got to really be sensitive to where your hands land and what angle. And I'm making all this up, but I think I could fake it.
Yeah,
I could be a fake swim coach, right?
Yeah, exactly. I get what you're saying. The lingo.
Yeah, just making shit up. But and then once you have the strategy and the tactics, obviously you go practice and you develop ability, whether it's swimming ability or the ability to make a plant-based stir fry without oil, or the ability to jog or walk a 5K without injuring yourself. Right? And all of those are pretty straightforward. It's the next one that really gives people trouble and stops people from succeeding, which is follow through. And the idea of follow through is, you want to do it, you believe you can do it, you know what to do, you know how to do it, you have the ability to do it, and you still don't do it, or you don't do it on a regular basis, or you stop doing it for a while and then it's like it disappears like a wisp of smoke, like it was never part of your identity. Like, I remember, how many times did I say, oh, I'm gonna journal? I keep hearing people say that journaling is a good thing to do. I'm gonna wake up in the morning and journal. And I'll do it for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, couple of months. And then one day it'll stop. And I'll be like 5 months later, like, didn't I have a journaling habit? Where the heck did that go? Right? I should have journaled about it. Then I would remember, right?
Yeah.
So it's really a follow through where people fall down. And the last one, identity, is when it's simply who you are. When acting this way is actually easier than not acting this way. But we want to focus on the follow through, because once you have motivation, the keys are, for self-efficacy, is to choose something small enough that you can succeed. And then the rest is follow through. So this, in my experience, is where almost everyone gets stuck. And there's 3 main reasons for this. So, Sarah, let's talk about the wagon illusion, which is this phrase that we all hear, oh, I fell off the wagon. Right? Like, that explains why I stopped doing my diet. I fell off the wagon. Or I had a gym membership. I was going 3 times a week, but then I had a business trip and I just never went back. I fell off the wagon. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, and even for myself, like, if I were to, say, fall off the wagon of when I had one bad time, that's like, oh man, this isn't for me, but then it's like, you don't know what you can accomplish with this data that you now have. So you know, instead of like, for me now, instead of looking at it as like beating myself up or feeling like I've lost it all, like taking that now and using it for fuel to go.
Yeah, and so why it's, you know, it's surprising how surprising it is to people. Oh my God, I didn't succeed 100%. Who could have seen that coming? Oh my God, I made an error. I am human. Where did that come from? And like, I think one of the things that we do at WellStart that I think is the most important thing at the very beginning is we tell people, you will fail.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a question. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's not a matter of when, it's how many times. And it's not a matter of how many times. The only thing that matters is what do you do afterwards?
Yeah.
Right. And you know, your point that I've heard you make several times is that failure is actually a blessing.
Yeah, it's part of the process, because if you don't have those failures, you can't now gain those lessons and that learning material, those tools to now put you back on the path that you're creating for yourself.
Right. Do you have, yeah, I know you have some good failure stories.
Yeah, okay, let's see.
And they aren't, and I love them because they're not negatives. Like you don't like, and
Yeah.
right? You're louder about your failures than your medals.
Yeah, exactly. Because they create that. Well, I'll just talk about what I had shared on the Sick to Fit page, because that one, it hurt a lot, because basically I had been training like one whole month, you know, or several months. Basically, I had decided I was doing this training plan, and I had been doing it for several months. And so I had tested one theory 2 weeks ago, and you know, it was my first race, so I learned a lot by like, okay, I need to train more for this one, right? So I felt like I was like all trained up and everything, and then I actually went slower, and it felt harder. And usually, like, you know, I'll beat myself up. I will be the first to admit it. I will say, oh my gosh, like, why didn't this happen? Like, why wasn't this outcome the way that I wanted it? And then instead of like looking at it as like, why wasn't it, but looking at of why it was, like, it was this, so that now I could take this data and move to the next one. And so then when I did it, 2 weeks later, I dropped 9 seconds from that particular time, but then I also dropped another 5 seconds from my previous time. So now, like, gathering all that data in 1 month or several months now became this like fuel to be like, okay, like, I know that I can do better because now I've done it and I can see it now. You know, it's like I needed that data to then almost believe that I could do it. And then this last weekend, I swam some different events and did my fastest, which one of them I had just swam my fastest a month ago. So, you know, and I know that there's going to be more failures, but to know that I can accept any outcome that is given to me in any time, that is like super powerful, like to be okay with it, you know?
Yeah, it reminds me when I was a school teacher and I was in charge of like the soccer game at lunch recess, and there would always be like crying and fights and arguments. And finally, I couldn't take it anymore. And before I would let anyone play soccer, I had them all raise their hand and say a pledge like, "I'm okay losing today." Right? It's like you know, you were. You're liberated. You don't need the world or you don't need anything to happen. You're not conditionally happy. You're not conditional, right? It's like, I mean, you can be unsatisfied. You can strive harder, but it feels like you don't approach these with fear.
Yeah, because now, like, I'm really experiencing that fear and excitement are the same feeling. It's just the words or the belief system that you have behind it. So if I'm going into this race, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do like horrible, well, I probably am going to do horrible because I already have experienced that. So I know that if I go in there with that thought pattern, that is what I will create. But if I go in with a thought pattern of, I'm so grateful, here I am, I get to experience another race. Let's see what I create. And then allow whatever I'm supposed to have in that moment be there, and not beat myself up if it's not what I want, and continue and grow and learn from that experience.
Right. So you can see how far this mindset is from the idea of I fell off the wagon, right? The wagon is moving without me. I'm sitting on my ass in the dust with skinned knees, and it's over. There's no more wagon, as opposed to what we think, like, you're the wagon. All you have to do, wherever you are in the process, if it was 2 days since you've eaten well or 5 months since I journaled, all I have to do is go, oh, forgot to journal. I'm going to start again now, right? Because we're only one step away from being back on that path.
Exactly.
All right. High hurdle number 2, exercise as atonement. So you ever exercise to compensate for the way you ate, or for how much you weighed, or for anything else, to use exercise to sort of beat yourself up, to punish yourself?
Well, yeah, all the time. I mean, as an athlete, like, a lot of us become athletes because we like to eat food. So we're like, well, I'm going to be an athlete now, so I can eat whole pizzas. Like, okay, I'll tell you that, like, when I was like 13 or, 14, like around that age, and after swim meets, it would be a contest to literally see how each of us could eat a whole pizza. And that probably wasn't like, good, but like, we were distance swimmers. So we were swimming like a lot of yardage really fast, and we were like, well, I burned all these calories, so I could eat this whole pizza. But, like, if I would have known what I know now, like, was that whole pizza, like, giving me more pain in my hip? Probably, like, it probably wasn't doing a good service for what I thought it was. But, like, I just was like, oh, it's food. Like, and there's so many people that still think this. They're like, I'm an athlete. Here's some carbohydrates. Let me eat. And, like, we don't really know about food and exercise as them being like, they each have their own equal piece, like, not like one is to overcompensate the other one. Like, they actually have their own piece to the path.
Yeah, and I think your perspective is different from most people who have not been athletes, but who still use exercise to punish themselves. Right? Like, Diane was talking about this yesterday. I'm going to go to the gym and work out really hard for 2 hours as penance for that cupcake. Right? Because, like, you ever go on, like, all these, this is like the worst thing they ever put on the displays was the calories burned. Right? Like, you're on the treadmill or the stationary bike, and you can just have it in front of you, and you can watch calories being burned. First of all, who knows how accurate that is?
Yeah.
Probably not very, but assuming it was perfectly accurate, 100% accurate, you're like, all right, I'm on the bike for an hour and I just burned off like a Snickers bar. And so like, whatever we eat, we're giving ourselves permission to eat crappy stuff that doesn't serve us, because we're going, well, I can put that in the bank account for later. Like, I'm going to pay with my credit card now, and I know I'm going to have to take it out of my bank account later. Right.
Exactly.
So we don't talk about exercise in WellStart. We say movement. Right. I read something yesterday it was a quote from, is it Jerry Lopez, the surfer, like this famous Hawaii surfer, who I think he said, exercise is medicine, movement is life. Right. And like, now when you get in the pool and you train or you race, you're doing it as like this joyful expression of this body you have, right? Of what it can do. Exercise, if we want to use that word, is a reward.
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you get
Yeah,
to,
not a punishment.
you get to compete. And we have, and so many people at WellStart, like, they'll post like, hey, I just did a mile, my first ever mile. And when people start eating right and sleeping well and taking care of themselves and doing their stress proofing work, and they find it gives them more energy and less pain, exercise then becomes movement. It becomes, hey, this is the reward for all that hard work, for all those changes I've made, is that this body wants to move. And it's like, stopping it now is like trying to keep your puppy from like pulling on the leash when you take it for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, let it off the leash, let it run around.
Exactly.
Okay. And the third one, motivation as a punctured tire. And the idea is, right, because if we're going to make these changes, we have to be motivated. And remember, we said motivation is the bottom rung. The trouble is motivation is very fickle. Like some days I'm really motivated to do my Facebook Live, to get onto coaching calls, to talk to people, to go do whatever. And some mornings I don't feel it. Like, yeah, I'd rather not do it today. And I used to believe that if I wasn't motivated, that I couldn't do it. Right? Well, I'm just not motivated to run today, so therefore it's a foregone conclusion that I'm not going to run. When in fact, we don't have to listen to that voice, right? So when you train, what time do you get up in the morning to go swim on days that you swim?
So it's changed right now because I'm in more of a taper phase. So right now I'm actually focused on rest. So I really like my training now. But if I were to go back like a couple months, say like last month, I usually would wake up at like 4 a.m. Sometimes we would go to a yoga class. I usually swim during the day or at night, depending on, some days it's twice a day. Some days it's once. Some days I'm doing 2 workouts. Some days I'm doing 3. It's really just like I've basically created my workouts on how I perform in the race. And if I'm not performing well, that means I've done too much and I need to focus more on a rest regiment. And so that's where I'm at now. And that's where I'm seeing a lot of time drop, is because I'm allowing all that, those times when I just had to talk myself into, those workouts. Now I'm reaping the benefits by doing a little bit more rest.
Gotcha. But those days when you were getting up at 4, was there ever a morning where you're like, I would prefer to sleep in today?
Yeah, there were many mornings like that, but luckily I have this amazing partner, Captain America, who is also just as motivated to work out as I am. And it just made it like when I wasn't motivated, he was, and then I didn't want to lead like him to do the workout, then I didn't get to go, so then it was like, it just like made it this partnership. So
right. And that's one of the keys, is to outsource some of the energy for your actions to your environment.
Exactly.
Right. So it's the more, and we teach this in the coach training, that the more motivated you are, the harder the thing is that you'll be willing to do. And the less motivated you are, the easier it has to be. And so one of the ways to make something easier is to have a partner who's also doing it, right? That kind of mirroring and peer pressure, which we get in WellStart Health, because we're a cohort-based program. So you get a bunch of friends to be motivated with. But there also is that time of, if one day you woke up and Captain America was like, I don't feel good, and you didn't feel like doing it either, you probably would still override it, because here's the secret that nobody understands. You don't have to be motivated to do a thing.
Yeah. You
don't have to be motivated in the moment. You can decide in advance, this is what I'm doing. This is what we do when we go to work. We don't say, at the job interview, every morning I am going to be so excited to come into work. And by the way, if I'm ever not excited to come into work, you don't bother looking for me, because I won't be there, because obviously, right? We say like, I'm a professional. I get the job done. And there's a great, remember, Julius Irving? Does that name ring a bell for you?
I feel like it rings a bell for me.
He was Dr. J. He was
Okay.
Dr. J before I was, so I never tried to take on that name. He was a basketball player for the New Jersey Nets, for the Philadelphia 76ers. Just an amazing player. He was one of the first like beautiful dunkers, like just poetry. And he was like, I think he said something like, professionals. I forget the exact quote, but basically, like, if you want to be a professional, you show up and do the work when you don't feel like it. Like, that's the definition of a professional. And so, like, if you want to be a professional human, you want to be a healthy human, you decide what you're going to do, regardless of whether you're motivated in the moment or not. So let's see if I can bring Elizabeth in.
Yay.
How are we going to do that? Click here, promote to panelist. Let's see how my webinar management skills are working. Hey, I see your name, but do you have a camera? There you go.
Hey.
Hey.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, Jacob. Or Howard.
So welcome. Thank you so much for jumping in. You came here as a panelist, and we're surprising you by asking you to share. Can you tell us a little bit about your story? And
I'm not as short as Sarah. Let's see.
you haven't practiced as much.
Yeah, I have
not
lots
at
of
all.
practice. This is practice.
But what she was saying was true. When I do tell my story in the group coaching calls and practice clients, they are getting shorter. So basically, my journey toward WellStart began last year when I had some kind of mystery something happen to me, some kind of virus that basically made the whole world start to spin, and not in a good way. So it attacked my balance system, my vestibular system. It attacked my eyes. It attacked my energy. And it was pretty intense. I thought I had just gotten some sort of, like mono or something like that. Something I was familiar with that would have gone away. And I was off all summer, last summer, and it just wasn't going away. I wasn't working. I could sleep as much as I want. And the very first things the doctors did, because I was kind of freaked out after a couple of days, it wouldn't go away. They wanted to check to see if I had a stroke. And then they wanted to check to see if I had a heart attack. And I just got sucked into this medical mill. And it was like what you had described. Nobody could figure out what was going on. I couldn't do anything. They said, try to relax, So what do you think for relaxing? Do the things you enjoy doing. And the things I enjoyed doing weren't available to me at the time. So it knocked me out. So I couldn't read. I couldn't walk, not in a straight line anyway. I couldn't stay awake during the day. I couldn't play my piano. Fairly high functioning, so I couldn't do, I'm an astrophysicist. I couldn't go outside and look at the stars. And after about 3 months, doctors couldn't figure anything out. I was about to sign disability at work. So they were helping me fill out the disability forms. And my doctor said, you just need to relax, go get a massage or something. So I went to the current place I'm still going to, which is awesome. The body place. And I got my massage. I told my massage therapist, I don't know what to do. This is what's going on. This feels great. I'm relaxing. And she introduced me to a physical therapist. And at that point, I just said, I got to try something. So I jumped in with the physical therapist. And after the second treatment, he had me actually walking. It felt horrible. I was still dizzy. I was still really sick. But I decided not to go on disability. I decided at that point just to try to get better. So 7 entire months of physical therapy, I'm looking kind of like a normal person. I'm moving around kind of like a normal person. But I'm still feeling all this stuff. And I'm feeling like, I'm never going to get better. And of course, I'm listening to some really cool podcast. I think it's called Plant Yourself. I don't know what that was. And at the end of it, this guy's just saying a bunch of names in rapid fire. And I keep hearing this thing, WellStart program, WellStart program. So I thought, I got nothing to lose. I have two choices. I could either stop, go on the disability, which was available to me, move back home, which was available to me, or I could try to do something. So I jumped into the WellStart program, and like you were saying, it was my game changer. So the little step, my decision not to give everything over to the doctors, not to give everything over to everybody and say, fix me, please fix me. The whole idea was, I wonder if I could fix myself. So that was a long story short-ish. But the WellStart program was the big game changer. And now I'm moving, I'm walking, and I'm going weeks without getting dizzy.
So can you talk a little bit about what shifted in you? Because, it is like you're the one who fixed yourself, right? I don't think any of us we've never met you in person. We've never made you do anything. Like in terms of either these high hurdles or anything else that shifted within you that allowed you to make this journey. What's like, like what for people who are resonating with your story and are thinking like, I want this too. What were the specific game changers for you?
The biggest game changer, you talked about the pyramid. I had motivation. I had motivation coming out of my ears. So, and I did have the choice. I had zero self-efficacy. So the stories I was telling myself, I don't think I'm ever going to get better. I can't do this. The future telling stories, this is going to be my life. And the big shift came actually the first time I met you. So I was a client when you gave me my very small step that I was 100% sure I could do. Just that very tiny step, but not just doing the step. That wasn't the important bit. I could walk to the car. I could go to the doctor. Your step for me was just wake up every morning. Just get dressed as if you were going to go through your day every morning. Walk to the mailbox and walk back. And that's it. That's all you have to do. And that's something we brainstormed together that I decided I could do. This would be my step. But what made that step valuable was understanding that I could do this even though I didn't feel good. So the idea of I just wanted it to all go away. I wanted to feel better before I made a step, before I tried to get better. And we decided through brainstorming that might not happen. I might not feel great. I might not feel like I did before. But let's just make the step in spite of that feeling. And I did that over and over again. And I walked to the mailbox and I walked back. And then I got a little bored just walking to the mailbox. I took all this time to get ready. I may as well walk a little farther. The sun kind of felt good. I didn't go out in the sun for months and months. And it was my decision just to do this in spite of feeling sick. That was the big change. To accept, like what Sarah was saying, that I don't feel like going out. I don't feel good. Yet I'm going to go out and do it anyway. And once that started happening, once I got out, I didn't even realize about a month and a half later that I was feeling better. So that was the big shift. My decision to try in spite of feeling unwell. And not putting it on, I need to feel better before I try.
Right. And that led to a cascade of like embodied realizations for you.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
Yes.
Any of those others that you think would be useful for folks?
What were the other two?
Well, it doesn't have to be those. I mean, you also mentioned like your, movement instead of exercise as punishment.
Oh yeah. And I did have to think of this as movement. Again, I didn't have the exercise as punishment so much. I was so grateful that I could move again. I mean, you take these things for granted. I had them all taken away from me and I got a second chance. So I thought that was it. The doctors were saying, well, all right, well, we have to start preparing. You should walk at work in a cane so you don't fall over. And you might have to use a wheelchair. Your life's not over. We can manage all of this. I'm thinking, I don't want to manage this. I want to get past this. So then when I found out I could move and that it felt good to move after a while, then I wanted to try everything. So this is stuff I had never done before. I joined yoga. I hired a trainer to help me balance better. And I got to where I was actually craving movement, even though some days I didn't want to get out of bed and do it. But I would miss it if I didn't do some sort of movement and express the gratitude that I could still do this. This was my second chance. And not only am I moving, I'm moving better than I was before I got ill. So it was just positive feedback, and that made it, I don't know what tilted the scales, but that made it so that I felt like I was recovering, and I feel like I'm healing. Even though I may not feel exactly the way I did before, I'm feeling differently. I think it's even better.
And you, Sarah and Elizabeth, you've worked together a lot.
Yeah. I mean, because what's great about Elizabeth is I see a lot of myself in her, but in a different way. So like the way that she was even telling herself about herself, it was just, it just became so amazing to get to work with her, because it was just like, oh my gosh, like if I had somebody, when I was in those moments of like really feeling like, like this is over, but then to just shift, like not to like tell you what to do, but just to like give you a mirror. Like that's all I'm doing is giving her a mirror, and she's doing all the work, and it's beautiful. And I get to meet her like in a couple weeks. So I'm like, really, it's like, I feel like a fan right now.
Yeah. And Elizabeth, you're almost done with the WellStart coach training, and you've been doing sessions, like getting volunteers from the Sick to Fit group and working with people. How's that been?
It's been amazing. It reminds me of, I am a teacher. It reminds me when you learn something interesting and exciting and you really want it to stick, you go tutor that particular subject.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also I feel, giving back, I don't know that I would necessarily describe it as giving meaning to what happened, because to be honest, there's still a little bitterness and resentment there, and I'm working through that.
Mm-hmm.
But having something be positive come out of this feels really great. And I wished that when this happened to me, I was able to see a story like this. And like Sarah was saying, have some sort of mirror, just that, this is possible. You can have some sort of control over this. You do not have to give your control over, and you don't have to give up. And what you think you might get out of it may not look exactly like you were hoping, but it might also be better. And in my case, it's better. But it takes a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, thank you for for everything. For I remember the early days, and to to see where you are now and the contributions you're making to the coach training, and the energy you're just broadcasting out into the world. It's just amazing.
I'm very grateful for the opportunity being a client and learning the training through the program.
Yeah. I know, and we all feel that way. Like we all had this same story at some level of like finding, like, it's like this wave that we're just a part of, to come up with a metaphor that Sarah will resonate with.
Yes, exactly.
Our water metaphor. So, well, end this real quickly. If anyone who's watching has any questions, you can just type them into the chat. We can see if we can grab them. I'm going to share again, not to go over the WellStart program, because I'm just going to share the page where you can read all about it. So I'll just skip through all this stuff and go straight to the page where you can read everything that we would talk about. Here it is, wellstarthealth.com/program. You can read about it. If you're interested, you can join. Let me bring up the chat. I don't know where chat went. There it is. And it's a privilege I think for all of us to be where we are within WellStart, in our lives, in representing this truth, this so obvious truth that's such a secret, right? I think, all of us, like there's a feeling, it feels like we can all remember when we were like confused and sick and uncomfortable, and it felt like how to get well was like this such a guarded secret. Like, why can't we find this? Why don't we understand it? And then when we get it, it's like we're embarrassed at how simple it is. Like, it's almost like a feeling of sheepishness, like, oh, that was it? And yet when we try to explain it to other people, very often it feels like there's this linguistic chasm. And so like one of the things we've created WellStart for is to sort of experientially get people there. Right? Because I remember when Josh was talking to me, and I didn't get it until I went running with him. So that's the goal, to take this thing that's, once you experience it, you operate on a completely different level. And no, it's not a secret. No one's trying to keep it from you. No one's trying to withhold it until you give them enough money. Right? It's simply this attitude of small, consistent steps, and expect setbacks and cherish them and use them for what they're going to give you. So I don't see any questions here. So I'm going to jump off. So Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Elizabeth, thank you for this cameo. It's your story, I know, is going to inspire so many people to take action. So
Thank you.
yeah.
And see, I predicted this. I messaged her. I was like, I know Howard's going to ask you. So I wanted her to
She
share.
warned me. I was trying to hide.
She's like, maybe I'll change my screen name. You know, He won't
I
know.
still can't figure out how to do that.
I was like, hey, it was cool.
Yeah, Big Brother is watching you.
Exactly.
All right. So thank you guys. Thank you everyone for watching live, for watching the recording. And if you're interested in finding out more, wellstarthealth.com/program. And we would love to see you on the inside of that program. So take care, everybody.
Yes. See ya.
Bye.